So today we're going to address an issue that often gets overlooked when we discuss the dynamic between privatization and the public domain. So what is it exactly that private oligarchs, private corporations have that is able to keep public discourse under their control? What is it that allows them to be able to do this to us? To say, hey, you ask for higher wages, we'll outsource jobs. You want to add healthcare to the public domain, for instance. You want to add that to your taxes. We're going to leave and go to some other country, and you'll have no jobs. Or, we're just going to raise the prices till they're totally out of control, and you'll say, okay, let's go back to normal. Well, this is a form of blackmail. This is legalized blackmail, and it's done because the oligarchs, the private profiteers, control the economic discourse because they control the bulk of the wealth of the country. Now, if we had more equitable wealth and distribution, there would be much more bargaining power among the masses. And therefore, it would be a much more even playing field as far as how we discuss this issue, who we bring to the table, and what would likely ensue as a result of that. But what we have right now is basically private profiteers who control the system, they own the system and run the system, and everybody else who is essentially just living in their world, at least according to the view of the oligarchs. And we are trying to have bargaining power that we once had, but has since been stripped away. And really the final nail in the coffin was what Reagan did when he was able to fire all the air traffic controllers, and that emboldened all the employers to start busting up unions. And now you get people like Elon Musk, like, why am I blanking on his name? Jeff Bezos? I don't know, I'm out of it today. But people like that who are just like, okay, you want to unionize? You're fired. It's just that easy. It didn't used to be. So when you have all the money and you're able to buy the politicians and you're able to push legislation in your favor like that, you basically as a worker have no power. They own the system. It's their world, you're living in it. So what they're able to do with this is say, hey, you try to bargain for higher wages, we're going to go to another country. We'll go to China. We'll go to Indonesia. We'll go to Bangladesh. We'll go to India. Or say, hey, you want to form a union? We'll fire you. Hey, you want better health care benefits? It's too bad. We're going to cut you down to part-time. Or we're going to wait until you slip up somewhere and we're just going to say, hey, you're fired, and we'll give some cockamamie reason as to why we did it. And you can't fight back because you don't have any money and you can't afford a good lawyer. That, my friends, is blackmail. That's why something like this should not be allowed but is allowed, because those who are doing the blackmailing have all the money and therefore all the power. That's how private profiteering is able to control public discourse. They're kneecapping the means by which populism can have a much better say in what goes on in public discourse. So that's why we need more equitable wage distribution and wealth distribution. That's why we need higher taxes on corporations and the rich. Because when you have so few people with so much wealth and so much power, and everybody else is forced to deal with their decisions and live with it, well, that's what you get. That's what leads to miserable people. That's why people are so depressed. That's why they feel stressed and overworked, and they feel undervalued. Our lifespans are getting shorter. Our health is abominable. So the only way to change all that is to change the infrastructure of our economy, which is to say, democratizing the economy. Now, some people may have heard of this already as worker co-ops. Some would say consumer co-ops. Well, there is an example of this, a pretty popular one, but most people really don't pay it any mind. The Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers are a fan-owned team. Now, some would say, well, that's a consumer co-op, right? The fans, they're the ones who buy the tickets. They're the ones who go to the games. Therefore, if they own the team, it's a consumer co-op. Now, I think it operates a little differently. Honestly, I haven't looked into all the details as to how that works with that organization. But I think it's a good base model for other businesses, for other companies and other industries to start copying, so that the workers have much more of a say in what goes on in the economy. And therefore, you basically take the power of the oligarchs to blackmail you away. And then you could say, oh, no, you don't. We're gonna elect people to Congress who are going to push the policies we want. And because this is a more even playing field, guess what? It's no longer about so much wealth and therefore concentrated power, political power through money. It's more about the numbers. How many more people want this compared to how many more people want that? And that's a true democracy. That's what real democracy is when it comes down to just the numbers. When it comes down to how many people want something over how many people don't want it. But also, we need to leave room for nuances. And when it comes to profit making, there's no room for nuance in the discussion of profit. Because that's the bottom line. To corporations, billionaires, investors, that's all they care about, profit. And they use the profits to buy the politicians, to hire the lobbyists and lawyers to write the legislation that they push to politicians, who, by the way, if any of you pay attention to politics, know that these people are not allowed to even read the bills that they're supposed to be holding votes on. A lot of them have even come out and said this out loud. So the fact is that we need a cultural change to make this happen. We got to have better and more equitable wealth distribution. We have to have a better tax infrastructure, taxing not only the rich and corporations to the highest possible level, but also give tax incentives to the working class to start up co-ops, start up independent businesses, and also have a right to a union, have a right to, let me just go off on a little bit of a tangent right here. I always say, I've said in a previous video that it's good to either have UBI pegged for inflation or wages pegged for inflation. My idea was to have UBI pegged for inflation because when it comes to making money, you're not going to want to have that flow of money interrupted when you're working because you want to feel like you're valued properly, right? Well, that's why you should still have the ability to bargain for your higher wages, and you should still have that lifeline, that UBI. Because let's face it, in any economic system, you're going to have downturns. You're going to have jobs that phase out. You're going to have companies that go belly up. You're going to have companies that have just had it and said, okay, we're closing our doors or whatever. And so you don't want those people to go away feeling like they're going to starve and they're going to lose their homes and they're going to end up in a homeless shelter or even dead. So that's why UBI is so important, especially nowadays. So, other than that, that's kind of what I wanted to address there. That's how the wealthy elites keep the population down, is with their oligarchic power and by blackmailing us. So we need to do something about that. Let's get out there. Let's hit the streets with these issues on healthcare, living wages, free college, UBI, all these issues. Just like we're putting into the Black Lives Matter and police brutality issue, let's start putting that into some of the core economic issues as well.